Story 1. It was a Thursday night. I had just finished bartending at the local pub and was on the train heading home. Unfortunately, I take a 1 hour train ride to and from work. It's a bit long, but the city I live in is very expensive, and it's all I can swing at the moment. Well, I was sitting at a window seat and minding my own business. It was past midnight, so the train was pretty empty. It was just me and one old lady sitting a few rows in front of me. She looked a bit odd, but not intimidating or anything. I'm around 6'3" and 250 pounds, so I can definitely handle myself. But there was something a bit odd about her. Have you ever seen someone and just felt, I don't know, off? Like something is simply not right with the person? Yeah, well, when the lady boarded the train, I got that strong vibe that something was wrong. She wore a long black jacket and had white, almost yellowish hair. She was reading a newspaper. She made no noise whatsoever. We were seated in the same car for about an hour before we came to my stop. I slowly stood up and walked past the lady towards the door. To my dismay, about a minute later, she stood up and approached me. She was surprisingly tall for a female. I would say she was around 6 feet tall, and she appeared relatively nimble for someone presumably well into her 80s. The lady stood directly next to me, and we both peered out the windows on the train doors. As the train began to slow down, the lady mumbled a few words. Confused, I asked her to repeat whatever it was that she said. Can you please give me a ride home, young man? I get nervous walking home alone in my old age. I don't mean to be a bother, young man. My grandchildren are away at college now, and my children are at work, so there is nobody around to pick me up. She smiled at me, a large smile with pearl, white teeth. Although the rest of her body was riddled with the taint of aging, her teeth appeared youthful and perfect. Seeing that I was on my way home, I agreed to give her a ride. I know, it was stupid, but it was a defenseless old lady alone at a train station late at night. I couldn't allow myself to let her walk home. We exited the train and walked to my car. I was surprised by how youthful her strides were. It was as if she were trying to slow down to keep pace with my relatively quick walking. We approached my car and both got in. She quickly sat in the passenger seat. So I live at 181 East Maple Street, she said. Okay, I will get you home in no time, ma'am, I answered. We were silent for most of the way home. The lady seemed to be breathing relatively heavily, as if she had just finished walking up a few flights of stairs. I dismissed the breathing as a product of her age. We stopped at an intersection about 5 minutes away from her house. It was one of those long, annoying red lights that seemed to never turn green. There were no other cars in the area. As we were sitting there silently, she suddenly jolted towards me. Her strength was overwhelming, and my fight or flight, well, flight, instincts quickly kicked in. As I struggled to unbuckle my seatbelt, she took a large bite out of the side of my neck. As soon as she bit me, she started laughing. It was a sort of maniacal laughter, as if she was an actress playing a patient in a mental asylum. Luckily, I got my seatbelt off and stumbled out of the car. I grabbed my neck and felt warm blood pass between my fingers. I got up and ran towards the nearest house. I'm a relatively fast runner, but I was in a complete state of shock and tired from a long night of work. As I ran, I slowly started to hear pounding on the pavement behind me. Thump, 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 slowly getting louder, followed by a shriek and slight maniacal laughter. I looked behind me and saw what appeared to be the old lady sprinting on all fours towards me at an increasing speed. Her teeth glowed in the light of the moon. Her eyes appeared to be a hint of red. Her robe was ripped, and she appeared to be foaming at the mouth. I never saw something so horrifying in my life. I ran as fast as I could until I reached the nearest house. I pounded on the door until I saw the light come on. To my surprise, a large man quickly answered the door. I exclaimed to him that someone was after me. Seeing the blood spewing out of my neck and hearing the urgency in my voice, he let me in and locked the door behind him. We called the police shortly after I arrived at the large man's house. The police canvassed the area and found no trace of the old lady. I was treated at the local hospital and given 22 stitches on the right side of my neck. These past few weeks have been kind of weird. I've been having trouble sleeping and have been very hungry as of late. I've since returned to work and have been taking the train again. No sign of the old lady anywhere, though. I am not sure what I should do next. If anyone has dealt with a similar situation and can give me some advice, please let me know. Sleep just is not coming any longer, and the hunger is getting worse and worse. I just need help. There's this nice young woman on the train right now. Her neck looks wonderful. Oh, she's actually getting off at my stop right now. I will keep you all posted. Story 2. It was a Friday night at around 9. My parents, who never go out, decided to go out to dinner and a movie, so it was my job to stay home and watch my kid brother, Jack. The night started out as any normal night. I needed to get some homework done. I know it was a Friday night, but I was going away for the rest of the weekend, so I needed to get ahead. My house has 2 floors. The main living area is on the second floor, where our living room is. The living room has a large window overlooking our front yard. The other relevant area is the large room on the ground floor. We call it the game room. In the game room, there is a ping pong table, a pool table, and all the video games known to man. The game room also has a large window overlooking the backyard. Behind our backyard is a large wooded area. So, I was sitting at the table in the living room, and my brother was downstairs playing a video game. My dog, a large German Shepherd, was sitting next to me as I worked. Around an hour passed and nothing out of the ordinary happened. I work with headphones in, so I could only hear the faint noise of shooting and subsequent cursing of my brother when the other team won a match. After around an hour, I looked up and saw my brother standing in front of me. Slightly startled, I took off my headphones and asked what the hell was wrong. My brother said, "I heard some noise outside. It sounded like someone was walking around in the woods." I quickly dismissed it as a product of his imagination and told him if he went back to playing video games, I'd order us a pizza. Mom didn't cook that night, and his favorite was pepperoni. Jack quickly agreed and returned to playing his video game. After another few minutes, I called a local pizzeria and placed an order for delivery. Another uneventful half hour later, the pizza arrived and I called Jack up to eat. Jack never answered. Annoyed, but not yet alarmed, I went to the game room to see what he was doing. My dog followed as I walked down the stairs. When I entered the game room, I froze. Jack was sitting on the floor. To my surprise, he was not alone. He was playing a board game with 5 other children. They all sat in a circle with the board game in the center. They weren't children he had ever played with before, as I did not recognize any of them. They each looked to be around 12 years old. They were unkempt and looked similar, as if they could pass as siblings. Their clothes were old, ripped in various areas, and stained with what appeared to be dirt and grass. They kept ignoring me as if I wasn't even there. It was as if they couldn't even see me. My dog, who loves kids, approached them and was sniffing and licking them, and they did not acknowledge him at all. "Jack," I said, "what the hell is going on? Who are these kids?" "These are our new neighbors," Jack replied with a smile. I knew this wasn't possible because our nearest neighbors were an elderly couple who I had seen a few days prior. Besides them, there weren't any neighbors for a few miles. The kids still didn't acknowledge my presence. They just continued to play the board game. They were laughing and appeared to be having a good time, but they were a little too enthusiastic. They kept patting Jack on the shoulder and staring at him a little too often. "Hello? Do you guys hear me?" I asked the kids. They did not respond. They just simply carried on as if I wasn't even there. I told Jack to tell his friends that they had to leave right now. After some protest, Jack explained to the children that they had to leave. Without much discussion, the children got up and left through the back door. I watched them walk through my backyard and into the dense woods behind my house. All 5 of them were gone in what seemed to be an instant. These past few weeks have been very strange. Things around the house have been going missing. Jack's board games and some of my mother's jewelry has vanished. On top of that, my dog has been acting up. He has been very aggressive as of late, especially at night. Now, I'm not saying it's those weird kids that played with Jack the other night, but I can't help but suspect that something is up. I keep asking Jack what they said and what he was thinking letting them in the house. He insists the door was locked and they just somehow appeared next to him in the game room. Jack is young and has a wild imagination, but he doesn't lie, and he's a good kid. Well, I'll keep you all posted. Please let me know your thoughts. I'm not sure where to go from here. Story 3. It all started out as a normal day. I went to work and was exhausted by the time I got home. Nonetheless, I knew I should get in some exercise. Seeing that all the gyms in my area are closed due to the pandemic, I decided to jog on a local hiking trail. The trail is 2 miles long and ends at a large lake. It is entirely surrounded by forestry. I usually jog the entire trail up to the lake and then jog home. It's not that long of a run, but it's better than nothing. I came home from work, laced up my running shoes, and was on my way. I started running at sunset. It was a slightly chilly night, so I could just barely see my breath as I exhaled. As I reached the entrance of the trail, I saw two or three other runners exiting. Besides them, it seemed to only be me on the trail that evening. I was trying to improve my pace from my previous jog, so I was pushing myself a bit. After around 10 minutes, I could already feel myself getting winded. I was approaching the end of the trail and could see the large lake. I planned to stop for a minute or two to take a breather. I stopped around 10 feet in front of the water and put my hands on my knees and slowly caught my breath. Thinking back, I really pushed myself too hard, and I didn't even think I'd be able to jog all the way home. I peered over the large lake. It was completely dark at that point. There was no noise whatsoever, except the sound of crickets. I stared down at my phone. Its screen lit up the area around me. It was now a bit past 8 o'clock, and I wanted to start heading home. I suddenly heard a noise. It was the sound of a lighter. I looked to the right of me, and just 50 feet away stood a group of 5 men standing there, huddled together. They were looking towards me. I put my phone away to extinguish the light and started quickly walking down the trail away from the men. I made it a few feet before one of them yelled, "Hey, can I borrow your phone? Just gotta make a quick call." I didn't even bother answering him, and I started jogging down the trail. "Get 'em!" one of the guys shouted. I was very tired before, but nothing wakes you up like a shot of pure adrenaline. I started running faster. After just a few moments, I started to hear footsteps and heavy breathing coming up a few yards behind me. They were growing louder by the moment, and despite the adrenaline, I was starting to tire out. I was coming up to a turning area of the trail. I knew if I ran at a full-on sprint past this corner, I would have a few precious seconds to hide in the forestry surrounding the trail. I took a few deep breaths and full-on sprinted. Within around 30 seconds, I cleared the corner, and for the time being, I was not within the line of sight of the pursuing men. I quickly headed into the forestry. I ran a few yards into the bushes and laid flat on the ground behind a large tree. For a few minutes, I heard no movement at all. I started to gain the small hope that my pursuers had given up. I slowly rose to my feet. As soon as I stood up, I heard a snapping of a branch and immediately dropped back down. Two of the men slowly appeared on the trail with a small flashlight. "Where did he go?" one man murmured to the other as they continued to walk down the trail. Suddenly, I heard a large screeching sound. It sounded like a mixture of a growl and the high-pitched scream of a human. To my horror, a large mountain lion ran down the trail towards the two men. The two men were caught by such surprise that they barely had a chance to react. The mountain lion leaped and grabbed one of the men by the leg and quickly brought him to the ground. "Help me! Help me!" screamed the now victim. The other man quickly sprinted in the opposite direction towards the lake. The man's screams did not last long, as his body slowly stopped resisting. The mountain lion feasted on his leg and abdomen. As if awakening from a dream, I remembered that I needed to get the hell out of there, or my now savior could become my new pursuer. I am pretty familiar with the area, and knew that houses were within walking distance. I walked directly through the forestry while the mountain lion was focused upon his new meal. I walked for around a half hour until I reached a fence surrounding a home. I hopped the fence and knocked on the back door. Luckily, the owners let me in, and we phoned the police. The police canvassed the area and only discovered the gruesome remains of one of my pursuers. They never figured out why he was there or who the other men were. The police did make one other startling discovery. They found a large machete on the ground around 100 feet up the trail. Did the men intend to use this on me? Was it being held by the other pursuer who fled once he realized that this machete would be no match for a ravenous mountain lion? I guess we will never know. Well, that's the story. I haven't been back to that trail since. Now I take my large black lab with me whenever I jog anywhere. I also make sure I only jog in highly populated areas. All I have to say is be careful jogging outside alone. You never know who or what might find you.